Hello and welcome back here again. Right now we are ready to get started with the first endpoint and implementing our first logic in this application. So this is good. The function that we need to go with is basically the get profile by user ID async. So the user logs in, we will call this function, and then we will check if this user has a profile or no. If he doesn't have a profile, what we have to do is to show him a UI that will ask him if you want to go with an organizer account or the user account. So the first step to do this is to fetch the account and to check if he has one or no. And let's get started by doing this. If we go back to the shared project, go to the models. If you remember, we have created this data transfer object that's going to be read and retrieved back from the client. This object, what we have to do is when we'll create a new user profile, we will submit such an object, and then when we want to retrieve this profile back to the client, we will use this DTO and convert the user profile that we have here into that object. So this is the object comes from database, contains a lot of properties like those. We don't need them. And what we have to do is just to basically create this object. So let's have a look of how to do this. First of all, I will go here and inject the unit of work we have created. Call it unit of work. Okay. And then like this. Okay, cool. So we have it existing here, and right now, let's call this function var user profile equals await unit of work dot user profiles dot get by. As you can see here, we have this get by user ID. It's already implemented in the repositories. So we should pass the user ID, and this user ID comes from the options. Okay, let me change this option names to add identity, because there's going to be a lot of... Okay, great. Basically, this renaming process, as you can see, they have done here. If you're wondering how I did this, you can basically just click Ctrl-R twice, and then whenever you update any name, so all the references going to be updated. And here, we can use this name, which makes more sense. Okay, interesting. This is the user profile. We have got it. That was pretty simple. Right now we have one thing to do, which is basically return this as a good result and wrapped with this operation response here. So what we have to do is to return if user profile is out there, then what we should do is just basically return success, and if not, we want to return error, and we will say that user profile not found. Okay, so to do this, I'm going to use those two functions pretty much in the system, the function error and the function operation response. And for this reason, what I'm going to do is to create a basic class for the services, and I'm going to put them as a protected functions so we can use them in multiple places. So here in the services, I will create a new class. I will call it base service, like this. Make it public. Great, great. And right now, I'm going to create two functions here. First, this one protected, and this protected one is going to return operation response. Operation, like this, and it's going to return type T. We call it error T, and then the message, and here we have only the message. Yeah, then let's return that. So message equals the message, and record. Okay, we can't send the record back because maybe it's not only not found, there is another issues, validation or something. Then I'm going to return the record like this. And then I'm going to copy this. And I will type success here. So this is the message. And what do we have? It's basically, we have forgot something very important, which is here to have a property called isSuccess. It's existing in the operation response. You can move to the class by clicking F12 or right click, go to definition, just like this. Okay, great. And this one here is success going to be false, and this one is success going to be true. So just like this, and because those functions are protected, they could be accessed from only the divided classes. So, okay, let's close this as well. And here, I'm going to inherit from base service, just like that. Okay, interesting. So right now I have a function called return. I'll type if user profile equals null, then return error, and I'll type here profile not found, and the record is going to be null. Okay, because I have defined here null, and this one is a generic class, I have to define the type, which is user profile detail, and then else it's going to return success. And here I'll type profile retrieved successfully. Okay, cool. And for the record, okay, here we have something else. As you can see, this record here is of type user profile, which is the business model we have, and we are using it in the database. But we want to retrieve to the client the user profile detail. So, well, that's good. We have something to talk about here. If we want to retrieve this, we need to transfer it from one tab to another. So I can type like user profile detail like this, and then just repeat the objects. But I'm not going to do this. Instead of that, you have multiple ways to do this. First, you can use a library called AutoMapper, which is great. That helps you map two objects like the TTO and the business domain object. But basically, I don't use AutoMapper because when it comes to like complicated projects or complicated objects, it needs a lot of configuration. So it takes time, just like creating my own way to do this. And the best way I do that, and maybe you don't prefer my way, so in this case you are going to with AutoMapper. So for that reason, in this way I'm going to show you how I can do it, and next time I'm going to show you how you can do this with AutoMapper, and then you choose the one that you feel comfortable with. I'll go to the models here, and I'll create a new folder. Add new folder, I'll call it mappers. And within this folder, I'll create a set of extension methods, just like this. I'll create a new class, and I'll call it UserProfile mapper. So I will make it a static class because they are going to be a set of static methods, extension methods, sorry. So the method that we want is to translate the user profile object into a user profile detail. And what we have to do is public static user profile detail. Okay, we need to import the shared here. So this is the result of what we called, and I will call this function to user profile detail. And the parameter in this case is going to be this user profile. I'll call it user profile. I'm using this because this is the concept of the extension methods, just like any string. If you are not familiar with the extension method, let's give it a moment to talk about this. For example, I will create this string here. I'll type equals I or name equals test. So this one is the string. When you type name dot, what you can see here, all the functions, all all the function that has this logo here, this icon of the bottom arrow, this means that those are extension methods. So when you click any, for example, it tries to check if there is any char within the string. And basically this one comes from the system.link. It's not from the string. And this is an extension. The parameter of this any is this one. So basically when you are creating your own extension method, this is this. And what you have to do is return that object. Okay, great. So right now we can type id equals userprofile.id, country equals userprofile.country, email the same. Like you see, this is not a good process because you just repeat stuff that. But as I've said, we will go with two approaches. I'm using this one and I will use automapper as well. And maybe you can use both together. Like you can use this way, and for this stuff you can use automapper. But sometimes when it comes to complicated objects, I've seen that configuring automapper is going to take time more than doing this. This is why I went with this approach. So the user ID equals userprofile.userid, and the profile picture equals userprofile.profilepicture, then created sense. Okay, cool. Right now, this function, I will leave it for now 1 minute, and I'll make a specific short video about this, how to calculate the difference between two dates and retrieve it like 1 minute ago, 10 minutes ago, 1 hour ago, and such a thing. Okay, this is cool. That was pretty simple. Right now, let's close this and click save. And then, when I come here, what I want to do is to retrieve this one into a user profile object. So what I have to do is to type userprofile.toUserProfileDetail. As you can see here, that was pretty simple and easy to do. In addition to this, you can use it in multiple places, just very easily. Just call this function on any user profile object, and you are ready to go. So this is nice. We need to remove this one. And after that, what we have to do is basically to go and create an endpoint for this function in the controllers. This is great. I'll go to the API, controllers, and let's have our first controller. I'll create it. Okay. Choose API controller, click add. And here I'll call this one user profiles controller, just like this. This is interesting. And now, before we're doing this, we have to inject, okay, this one, service extensions, and I will have a function here, public static void, register business services, like that. And then we can inject its service we have here. Okay. We need to add reference to the .services project, and the implementation for that is the user profile service, just like this. And that's it. This is cool. This is the unit of fork already injected, and what I'm going to do right now is to go to the startup, go to the configure function, and here I'm going to call a function called register business services. Or maybe we can, because we have used the name add, I will use add instead of register. Again, Control R to renaming, enter. That's a very easy process. If you go back to the service extensions, you'll see that the name has been updated as well. So, great. Now, let's go back to the user profiles controller, and what I'm going to do is to inject an instance of that service. User profiles service, user profiles service, like this. Let's inject that in the controller. Okay. File service. Interesting. So now we have this function to get the first user profile. So action result is going to be async task, just like this. Interesting. And here I will call it get. It won't take any parameter. It will check if the user is logged in. Then it will fetch the user profile based on the logged in user. And for this case, this controller should be protected. And before we forget, let's add the authorize attribute. Okay, great. We have it right now. I will call a function var result equals await. And here, what I'm going to do is to call user profile service dot get user profile by ID, by user ID async, just like this. That's a pretty simple. And as you can see, this one returns operation response of user profile detail. So what I'm going to do, check if result dot is success. So in this case, there is a user profile and right now it's retrieved successfully. So I'm going to return OK and return the response back to the client. If not, what I'm going to do is to return not found, just like this. So check here. Maybe you can return this object as well. Like you can say that the object is not found, but I think there is no need, like not found is enough. Okay, cool. And right now, what we can do is basically just test this one. So let's get back a little bit for testing. If we want to test this, we need to use the access token, and the access token is fetched by the Blazor project from behind the scenes. So what we have to do, I won't every time make changes here just to test this one, because as I've said at the beginning of the course, I will leave the Blazor project for another stage, so you can follow up if you are interested only in the backend and not to make things messy while working front end and back end at the same time. I prefer to finish the API and then move back to the Blazor app. So for this reason, we are going to use the Blazor app just for little references, and for calling and testing the API, I'm going to use Postman. Okay, great. But right now, as I've said, we cannot fetch the access token using the Postman from the Azure P2C, Active Directory P2C, and then send that to the server. And this is why I'm going to show you right now. And I've seen some asking about this, like how this one is working behind the scenes and fetching basically the token and setting it in the header of the request. Okay, well, this is what you are going to see right now. So, well, I will go to the index page, this one here, or basically, let's make it the fetch data because it's already protected. Okay, great. I'm going to fetch the access token and I will print it here. I will see how the authorization message handler doing behind the scenes to fetch that token. So there is a service called IAccessTokenProvider. It's basically available in the WebAssembly, the authentication namespace, and it allows you to fetch the access token. So I will call it AccessTokenProvider. And then, okay, it has been injected. And what I have to do right now is to use it to get the token. What I need to inject as well is the I configuration, because I want to fit the scope like this one. We are using this Azure Active Directory P2C scope object to be able, which is basically the permission that allows us to call the API. And I will call this one configuration, just like this. This is interesting. And let's see the process of fetching the access token. It's pretty easy. I'll type here task string get access token. And then here what I'm going to do is to type var token result equals await access token provider dot request access token, like that. And then it takes an option, access token request options. Okay, so what we have to pass here is just basically the scopes that we want to fetch access token for. So it's an array, so I'm going to type like this, it's an array, but basically we have only one scope. So the scope is Azure B2C, Azure AD B2C scoop, just like this. If you go back to the program, let me copy it to make sure that, okay, interesting. This is great. And right now I can type access token, or you can do that directly, token result.try get token, if it's fetched or not. So it's out variable access token var result equals, and here if result, this result is a Boolean indicator that indicates if it was able to fetch the token or no, then in this case return this access token dot value, else just return null, just like this. This is basically how the authorization messaging handler is working behind the scenes. It's fetched the token, and after fetching it, it has access to the HTTP client. It goes to the header, set this access token in the authorization header, and it sends the request. So right now we have the token, and what I'm going to do is to type token here equals string.empty, cool, and here when we run the project, I will type token equals await get access token, and Control R, I prefer to call all the objects awaitable methods with add a suffix async, and this is great. Right now I can print that token, and I will put it here somewhere to be able to copy it. Access token. Okay, where is it? I've called it token, so it's token here, and that's it. That's pretty simple. Again, let's run the application and see how we can fit the token. I will take it from here, put it in the Postman, and send the request to our first endpoint. So interesting. What I'm going to do here is I'll go to my workspace. Okay, cool. And here for the new collections, I'll click on create new collection. I will call it TicketsBasket. And then, okay, here calls to that tickets basket endpoints. This is interesting. Okay, I'll click create for now. Let me close all tabs. Great. Okay, let's go back to this one here. Let me check if the API is working. Where is the API? Okay, if I click on fetch data right now, because it's protected again, it's going to ask me that I should log in. This is cool. Interesting. Click sign in. And let's go back to this UI. And before fetching, the data is going to fit the token. Let's see. Okay, I should stop this. Open that again. And that's it. As you can see, this is our amazing object. It's very long. Oh my god. Like, you have to scroll forever to be able to fit that. But I will click 3 times. And then right now I have the token here with me. I can go to TicketsBasket. And what I'm going to do is just basically click on a new. It's a GET request. I'll go to the authorization, period token. I'll paste that here. And then this is great. Now let me go back to the API that we have launched. I will copy the URL. I'll put it here, /API/userprofiles. I didn't call the get function anything, so it's going to be the get by default. Let me go here and set a breakpoint for it. And let's see how everything will go to work. Wow, this is cool. As you can see, it's authorized and we have fetched that. Let's click F11. And right now, to see this, how this is going to work, we have the user ID. Okay, try to fit that from the database. Interesting, return null. Great, great. And then I will just continue because we got the result, and this is what we want. We have got not found. That's great. This is our first request. A lot of new stuff we have learned in the session. Basically, and I'm so happy for this because finally we are on the first operation to do some logic and to do some stuff. Right now in the next video, because we have our first endpoint, before we proceed with the second one, we should create two things. First, we should enable Swagger, see our endpoints, and then we need to create a helper function to calculate the difference between two dates and return them as a readable string. So that's everything for this session. I hope you enjoyed it, and see you in the next one.